This is Saurabh, and you're listening to my favorite talk show, The Weekly Show with Aditya.
This is episode 212 on the 25th of May 2020. When it comes to a sport like cricket, it is a universal truth, or rather, it is a half universal truth pertaining to countries from the UK, Australia, South Africa, and the subcontinent that India is a bully when it comes to this sport. But this bullying is not about intimidating, but luring players through money to play the domestic World Cup. And it's a well known fact that every player on the planet who has played this sport or who is playing this sport and a current player wants to be part of the lucrative T20 domestic World Cup. Only a 1% of the population who play this sport are not lured by it, but if they retire, they want to become coaches of the respective domestic teams. So, is India a bully when it comes to cricket? Yes, there are no two facts about it. It's as clear as the morning sunshine. I have in my previous episode already talked about the cash rich tournament versus poor as a church mouse tournament, that is the Indian 20 over domestic World Cup and the Indian 5-day domestic competition. Players who are active in this sport often say that they want to play this T20 tournament because they come in contact with the best of the best in terms of coaches, players, former players. Well, the definition of rubbing shoulders with other players may become different when it comes to the idea of this hypothetical corona, that you're not allowed to shake hands or do any of those physical contacts. But if you look at it metaphorically, the one major reason that players are attracted towards this tournament is the luring of the money. The money lures them to play this tournament, and I don't have to prove it. A current player has said it. Let's see what this player had to say about his experience playing this tournament, not just coming in metaphorical contact with other players in terms of teammates, coaches, and commentators, but the money luring. So let's look at what this particular player had to say. We are going to concentrate on each and every line this player says, and we are going to discuss that in detail, take a deep dive. So, as you know, Jos Buttler, who was one of the heroes of the 50 over World Cup, where England became world champions after involvement of more than 142 years in the sport last year, and plays for Rajasthan along with his teammate and all-rounder Ben Stokes, who was also responsible and played a major role in getting his team across the World Cup. What happened in that World Cup, that is a different story. But let's get back to what this player had to say in the context of the domestic World Cup. The Indian T20 domestic World Cup has helped English cricket grow, feels batter Jos Buttler, admitting that the cash-rich T20 domestic tournament is the best in the world after the ICC World Cups. What are the key words in this first paragraph? The key words are cash-rich tournament. Clear that they do not play just to grow as a cricketer but to secure their bank accounts for the rest of their lives. Money is a lure, and that's a universal truth. The same way, graduates are attracted towards US because of the opportunities and the money involved. No other reason. Let's go on further with what this player had to say. Butler said he was desperate to be a part of this year's tournament, which now has been indefinitely suspended due to reasons beyond everyone's control. This was evident last year when the domestic tournament ended 15 days before the World Cup, and the Indian Cricket Board managed to schedule their matches in such a manner that there was a 15-day break between the last match played in the domestic tournament and the first match played in the World Cup. There was a break. They managed to coax the International Cricket Council that give us a 15-day break because we cannot end this tournament earlier. Remember, the T20 domestic tournament ended just 15 days before the ICC 50 over World Cup began, and yet every other player was forced to leave this tournament midway and go back and play for their teams, while the Indian players managed to play the entire tournament depending on whether they were part of the finals or any other such knockout game, and they got a 15-day break. Had this been the case of any other cricket board, they would have never got a 15-day break. Shows that how India is dominating in terms of not only the money part but in other areas as well, that the ICC has to bow down to one cricket board, or what is often called the Big Three. This player said something very interesting. Butler, who made massive strides as a white ball player after a few seasons of this domestic tournament, said this tournament is like the fantasy cricket he aspired to play as a kid, with the top stars of the game rubbing shoulders. Well, metaphorically, you might be rubbing shoulders, but once the game starts, literally there will be no shoulder and no touching. Now the question is, if you ask the current players, the former players, and anybody who is a stakeholder in this particular tournament, if you ask them what would they rather watch or what would they rather play, would it be the International World Cup or the domestic World Cup? I can tell you 95% of these individuals would say that the domestic World Cup should be played depending on the permission by the respective countries, but the domestic World Cup should be given a higher priority over the International World Cup, and this was evident last year as well, because it is often the performances in this domestic World Cup that the selection committees of various boards choose the players. And now, since the domestic World Cup hasn't happened, means the players are out of practice in a manner of speaking. So will they be prepared for the International World Cup? How will the selectors decide if the players are ready, since most of these players haven't played a single match since February? Then the next question that arises is cricket going the way of football? Are the domestic tournaments, often popularly called the leagues, getting the more bigger chunk of the pie than the international tournaments? For example, when one says football, we know that we say European and South American football, but we do not say Brazil or Portugal or Germany. We say the domestic tournaments which are conducted by these countries. Nobody is concerned that the Euro 2020 is postponed, but everybody wants that the various domestic football tournaments, that is the English Premier League, the La Liga, the Bundesliga, should start, even if it means following the social distancing norms and other such restrictive norms imposed on the players. You ask them, they wouldn't mind if the Euro 2020 wasn't played, but they want the respective domestic tournaments to be played because they are domestic, they are concentrated in one geographical area. Traveling is not much of a hassle. In the Euro 2020, players would have to travel from one country to the other, and there could be a risk of contracting this hypothetical virus. But no longer is the case that one would contract the virus if they are limited to one geographical area. If 4 teams or 10 teams of a domestic tournament come together and conduct it successfully, and once again, just like the Indian 20 over domestic World Cup, financial constraints or financial losses is playing a huge role in forcing the organizers and other stakeholders involved to push for these tournaments being started again. Such is the nature of European football tournaments, the South American football domestic tournaments, and the Indian domestic tournament, that the lure of money makes individuals forget other issues. Yes, this pandemic is playing an important role right now and is forcing the stakeholders involved to change the rules. But if that is not taken as an important part of what is happening right now, and if the players are asked would they rather play an international tournament or a domestic tournament, why will they not go for the domestic tournament? Because in a domestic team there are 3 or 4 what one calls the MVPs. Similarly, in US there are no international tournaments as far as baseball, football, hockey or basketball are concerned. You have the major basketball league, the NBA, National Basketball Association. It's a state versus state tournament. Then there is the National Hockey League, NHL, the NFL, the National Football League. What are these tournaments in one word? They are tournaments, what one calls the franchisee or the state versus state based tournaments. Those who have been following such sports, you would know that there is no international World Cup. Rugby World Cup happens once in 4 years. But the rugby tournament, the Super Bowls, the NBAs, the entire country follows it. There are stakeholders involved. So much is at stake. The money, the players, the performance of the players, the money pumped in by corporate houses. And this effect is being felt in India as well. Is the tide turning towards domestic tournaments? Well, if this trend carries on, then, and if the other sports are also involved, then the PBL, the Pro Badminton League, the ISL, the Indian Super League that involves the football tournaments, this Indian T20 Domestic World Cup, there could be a possibility that the international World Cups may become rare. The International Cricket Council will say that we may conduct a World Cup every 7 to 8 years, because right now the discussion is about if the World Cup is postponed. For now it's postponed. Can the domestic World Cup be inducted into that window with respect to the permission from the various authorities? If the permission from the various authorities come through, And if it does happen, then that time which was supposed to be hosting the World Cup, that window, what we call the window, which was supposed to be reserved for the International World Cup, could be replaced by the domestic World Cup. And why? Because there are financial constraints and everybody wants a chunk of that pie. Let's look at how the domestic World Cup gets a major share, or what are the finances involved if the domestic World Cup is played, and what if it had not been played. Let me read this line for you. The argument of those in favor of the T20 Domestic World Cup this year has some compelling dimensions. If the tournament is not held, the projected 3,000 to 3,500 crore rupees profit have to be written off forever. However, if the T20 International World Cup is postponed, the losses would be minuscule in comparison. With spectators unlikely to be allowed to attend matches in Australia and sponsorship receipts likely to nosedive post this hypothetical pandemic, the T20 World Cup will hardly have the luster or the lucre imagined even 3 months back. And while we keep hearing that there are rules for cricketers, that is, slew of measures that were announced by the International Cricket Committee, which I have already discussed. And if my listeners want to know, you can go to my previous episodes to have a look. But when there is a sport, there are players and then there are referees and umpires. So there are a slew of measures announced for the umpires and the referees. Let's take a look at how the umpires and the referees for this sport will have to be careful in interaction with the players. The International Cricket Committee or the International Cricket Council recommended a slew of measures, including the appointment of chief medical officers, a 14-day pre-match isolation training camp, and use of gloves by umpires while handling the ball. The ICC has stated that players should not be handing over caps, towels, jumpers, etc. to the umpires between overs, while also saying that the on-field officials might have to use gloves while handling the ball. Believe me, the social distancing between an umpire and a player in cricket is nothing compared to the social distancing required in other sports. Now, if the referee in football gives a red card or a yellow card as per the nature of the sport, the player involved can't even argue. How will a player in hockey show the T sign? How will they show the T sign if they don't come closer to the umpire and communicate about the issue at hand? In hockey, you cannot communicate from a distance whether the stadium is full or empty. You have to come at least a couple of meters close. With the whole gamut of umpires wearing gloves, well, we know who all wear gloves. It's the elite. Cricket is an elitist sport, will always remain an elitist sport of the wealthy, for the wealthy, by the wealthy, and those who want to become wealthy also participate in this sport, irrespective of what their current financial situation is. Let me tell you, like any other slew of measures announced in other domains, like the work from home or maintaining a distance of 2 meters and other such measures, these measures, as I have said before, look good only on paper, and a practical use if it can be done practically is something that no one right now has an answer to. This is very similar to the measures announced by educational boards when they fear cheating is going on. So, how will they have a buffer? This entire situation surrounding this pandemic and its concern and the risk assessment of players and their social distancing amuses me because never have I ever seen a sports body involved so much in announcing measures for the safety of the players. Not even when there was fear of match fixing and gambling involved in the sport. If this was related to gambling and match fixing, I'm sure these international cricket sports associations, be it the FIFA, be it the UEFA, be it the Federation of International Hockey, or be it the International Cricket Committee or the International Olympic Committee, I'm sure they wouldn't have bothered about it so much if this was not about the scare of the pandemic but the scare of match fixing and gambling. As I said, most of these measures look good on paper. When it will come to a practical assessment, whether it can be done practically, we will know that every cricket team will try on camera to maintain these measures, but when there are places which are where camera is not allowed, for example the locker rooms, though they are putting a vigilance and a CMO to take care of that. Till the present time, before sports came to a sudden halt, especially cricket, cricketers were fined for using abusive language and hand gestures which were not in tune with the hypothetical gentleman's game. They were fined, they were suspended. Now, will these suspensions also include these social distancing norms? That if players don't adhere to these new norms added in the rule book, that is, if a player accidentally or by nature hugs a player, will that player be suspended or worse, will they be isolated and quarantined? It will be indeed an curious situation when it happens. How will the match referee react? What will the umpires do? Will they get more than their quasi judicial powers? How will they check whether players are maintaining social distancing or whether they will put the fear of this pandemic in the players that even the most mature of players will have no option but to stay away from their fellow teammates. I'm really looking forward to this amusing and humorous situation as to how this happens. As I said in my previous episodes, all these measures is akin to pressing a self-destruct button. And if you want to know more about what I said with reference to the self-destruct button, listen to my episode which was broadcast on 11th of May. Enough of these hypothetical measures emanating from a hypothetical pandemic. Let's get back to the financial part and how the Indian Cricket Board wields its enormous financial powers over other cricket boards, not just through the 20 over domestic tournaments, to help other cricketing nations come out of the crisis caused by the pandemic. The Indian Cricket Board, the richest body in world cricket, remember the key word, the richest body in world cricket, is already working on a plan to schedule bilateral tours. Cricketing nations make the most money from broadcast rights when India visits. There you go. We are focusing so much on the money part. Why will other boards want to have more and more matches with India? Because, as this paragraph says, the broadcasting rights involved, the sponsorship involved, the craze around the 11 or 12 players of the Indian team involved. The one thing that has come out of this hypothetical pandemic and the rules around it is that habits like spitting out chewing gum on the sports field and using saliva is dangerous and players will have to change. But my question is once again, why was this not enforced earlier? Why are we being hypocritical when it comes to such habit, whether they are good, bad, or ugly? As I said in my previous episodes, episode number 206, if you want to listen, I'm just going to give you a glimpse of what I said. Sports players sweat. You can't prevent that. If sweat comes off your brow and falls on the ground, and if somehow the virus is contracted, there's nothing you can do about it. That's a natural human reaction. You cannot stop natural human. If you want to know more on what I said about which sports are contact sports and how these rules will affect the natural progression of these sports, do listen to episode 206. I repeat, do listen to episode 206, which was broadcasted on 11th May 2020. Enough of this spitting and chewing gum and contracting the virus and everything, because this is now an old story. Whatever the rules are being brought, I'm sure the practical use will be only 80 to 90%. How much of will it work? One doesn't know until the sports start. How much the players are going to maintain distancing, whether they're going to celebrate through fist bumps, through hugging, and other such measures, we won't know until the sports start. Yes, a few tournaments have started, so the result is that players are trying to adhere to these rules, staying in a bubble, not talking to any players, and trying to maintain the rules so that they are not fired if they don't adhere to these rules. After a while, according to me, nobody will care about match fixing and gambling. I think match fixing and gambling will become a part of the sport, but everyone will be concerned about things like spitting and virus and distancing and other such slew of measures which look only 75% practical. But enough of this, let's move on to something more interesting. As we all know, Ravi Shastri is the current coach of the Indian team, and when it comes to coaches of the other sports team, they will be there for a long time, and we will talk about them as this episode progresses. Coach of the Indian football team is Igor Stimac. He is not only the coach, he is the captain of the field, the selector, and other such roles. A coach in football plays multiple roles. The manager, the coach, obviously, the selector, the captain, the strategic expert, the one making all those decisions as to what positions will each player take. Will they take positions through which they can exercise other strategies? Well, the coach in football and hockey play a different game. But let's get on to a sport where the coach is a passive stakeholder. And when it comes to talking about a passive stakeholder, I have already written an article on this. And if you want to know more about what I wrote, read my book, The Fifth Empire, and you will know what I wrote in that article. The coach is an important but a passive stakeholder. Now, we all know that the contract of the current Indian cricket team coach will surely come to an end. And from what I believe, and there are no rumors, no discussions around this, but my experience says that he may not want to extend. he may want to return to his most beloved profession, the commentary part. As I have enumerated so many times, cricket's gain is commentary's loss. So if his contract is extended or not, that's between the coach and the Indian Cricket Board. But if you look at it in another manner, will he want the contract to be extended? Will he apply again? Because you are supposed to apply according to the new rules. So let's imagine, let's be hypothetical about it and say that Ravi Shastri does not apply to be the coach of the Indian cricket team. Who are the other candidates who can do a good job? Looking at the pool of individuals involved, I do not see any other individual who could have done a stellar job. The two individuals who could have been a part of it are already involved in other managerial and administrative positions that include someone like Rahul Dravid and Saurav Ganguly. Sachin Tendulkar, though he was a great player, doesn't have the pedigree to be a coach. He can only come and give sermons, but being a coach, strategizing, sitting with the players for hours, discussing, he is not in that category. Then the question comes, who does that leave? According to me, the options for a future Indian cricket coach, if hypothetically Ravi Shastri is not given a contract and he also refuses to apply again, there are very few options, and the option I am about to give may not be in sync with what my listeners would want. There are a few coaches who have trained at the 5-day domestic level, what is called the Ranji Trophy level, and they may want to apply because of the ego clashes which may not come, but I don't think that is going to happen. Just as the selection of the coach W.B. Raman was a huge mistake by the Indian Cricket Board to appoint him as the coach for the Indian women's cricket team, irrespective of the fact that whether he had experience or not, that is a different story. Whether he had coached at various levels before finally becoming a coach at the international level, that is a different thought process. But there were better individuals who could have done the job. But that is not what is on our focus right now. He is the coach for a while, and despite what happened in the finals of the women's 20 over championship, he remains the coach. Let's look at the hypothetical probables for the position of the Indian cricket coach of the men's team for now. Individual who took the team to the final of the Junior World Cup could be a probable option. Despite his relative inexperience, someone who has not represented the country, that is Paras Mambre, who has only played at the domestic level. At this point, looking at the option was looking at experience versus pedigree, I would go for Virender Sehwag. He may not be the ideal player. His attitude, his casual attitude towards things in general may not make him the best option. He even may not have the experience as a coach, but experience is relative. At least Sehwag, compared to the other options, has played for a decade. He has played for more than a decade, and that for me counts more than anything, irrespective of the fact that whether he has coached junior teams or the domestic 5-day teams or not. I would even include someone like Mohammad Kaif. This guy has also played for 7 to 8 years. He was the reason, along with Yuvraj Singh, that why India's fielding became what it is today. They are in a way 95% responsible for the quality of fielding, but that is history. But looking at the coaching options, these two are right there on my top 2 probables list. Though for most purists, they would rather go for players who have played more domestic tournaments, who have scored runs after runs on these placid pitches where they didn't have to struggle for things like swing and seam and bounce, because we know Indian pitches are the easiest to bat on. So the options would be players like who may or may not have played for the country, who may have played one match, but they have played more of those domestic tournaments and also coached. So who are the other probable options? So for me, not the best option in terms of the fact that they have never played at an international level. The options could be, the most of my listeners would not even know if these players exist, would be players like Abhay Sharma, Shitanshu Kotak, Rishikesh Kanitkar, Siraj Bhautale, Nilesh Kulkarni, Amol Mazumdar and Abhay Kuruvilla. Out of these, only Rishikesh Kanitkar, Siraj Bhautale and Nilesh Kulkarni have played for the team, but at best they have played 3 to 4 matches, while players like Shitanshu Kotak, Amol Mazumdar are what they call domestic giants, who have scored runs after runs as far as the domestic tournaments are concerned. So it will be a dilemma. These individuals may want to apply and they may want to say that I have coached the domestic teams, I have been part of these teams as a management. It will be very interesting that when the renewal of the contract for Ravi Shastri comes up, who are the probable options? As I said, for me, for now it's Sehwag, Yuvraj and Mohammad Kaif. They may not have the experience, but do they have the guts and the ego to tackle the current team? Yes, they can do that. And why not? Why not push somebody who has zero experience? Let's see how they perform. Because if somebody who has already coached comes up, will they be able to deal with the international pressure? Will they be able to deal with teams who are better than them if it's an India-Australia test match? Will these players who have never played for the country or who have played one match, will they be able to tell players who have played more than 90 matches that how do you play? Then why don't I go for someone like Sehwag who knows what it was to play with top teams? I rather would go for that. But it's not my opinion. I am not on the recruitment panel, though I would love to be on the recruitment panel, but let's see what happens. This ends episode number 212 on the 25th of May 2020.
For more awesome content, tune in to the next episode of the Weekly Show with Aditya.